Every human being is worth listening to a story.
Who you are here in high school, but it's not who you are, right? You'll find yourself there.
Failure's okay, and everybody does that, and nobody actually really cares if you fail as long as you kind of keep going.
How you respond to adversity marks your character is what I like to say, and in college you're given plenty of opportunity to respond.
I could have done it without college, there's no way.
Not everybody knows that they can do it if they just do a little bit more.
I've certainly never known anybody that has come back and said, I wish I would have messed around more. I wish I would have goofed off more.
Just because something horrible happens or something that seems like, oh, that's what I wanted to do and I can't do it, that doesn't mean you can't. It means you have to take that experience and make positive out of it.
My name is Ryan Adams, and I teach history here at the high school.
What motivated you to become an educator?
Kind of a lot of different variables, process of elimination. I went to college to become a lawyer. Well, that was like my plan out of high school, was to go to law school. Then I was in my first year, took one law class. I figured that was not for me. I also didn't really want to be in school for 7 to 8 years. And so I started kind of thinking about what did I want to do with my life, and like what were some things I felt like I couldn't live without. One of those was sports. I was always involved in sports. And so I kind of just thought about how do I want to be involved in sports. And then that kind of led me to the high school level kids because I didn't want to get involved with kind of the recruiting aspect of college sports or anything like that. And so once I kind of thought about being a high school coach, I kind of figured what's the easiest way to do that. And teacher is obviously the easy way to do that. And then through that, just kind of my passion for teaching then kind of took off. Did a lot of stuff throughout school, high school, the cross-age tutoring and all that stuff. A lot of people told me that they thought I'd be a pretty good teacher. Money was always kind of the big thing that kept me away from that. I always thought I wanted to make a lot of money and, have a prestigious job and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, just got into college and was like, nope, that's not for me. And then obviously the schedule is pretty nice as well. And so, again, was something that I was always used to because as a kid, that's all you know, and didn't really want to go away from that either.
Describe your college experience. What major did you pursue and why?
Yeah, my college experience was pretty interesting, looking back on it. I probably wouldn't recommend the way I did things too much, but I went down to the University of Oregon my freshman year, and then I was there for a year. Again, that's kind of where I was, trying to figure things out, pursued law, didn't work out. Thought about law enforcement a little bit, and then once I was set on education and being a teacher, I wanted to transfer to Western Oregon. I used the excuse, of their education program and whatnot, which they have a really good one, but it was definitely more comfortability. I knew more people there that were going to school there already. So transferred up there my second year, and then, like I said, started pursuing that degree, and started getting plugged in back here at the high school with coaching and things like that. When I got to Western Oregon, I've always been kind of the person when I know kind of what my goal is, that we're gonna try and go 100 miles an hour and get there as fast as we can, and so that's what I started doing at Western Oregon. I started racking up how many credits I could take and trying to push the limit. Started taking, 17, 18, one term I was taking 20 credits. So like I said, just trying to get through a lot of that because I figured and decided I wanted to be back here. And so tried to get through the college stuff as fast as I can and get as plugged in here as much as I can and just tried to, again, learn as much as I could as fast as I could and kind of start the whole career aspect. So,
what made you focus in on history?
I kind of took what I liked the most from high school and what I was the best at as a student in high school, and it was math and history. Math always came super easy to me, and formulas and equations that I can memorize and remember pretty well. And it was logical, it was applicable, and that's kind of how I function a lot. And So it was a mix of that. So I kind of wanted to pursue that a little bit, and then history. I actually fell in love with history my junior year here with Mr. Augsburg was my teacher, and 20th century history was just a lot of fascinating things that I really enjoyed and could correlate and connect the dots to kind of where we're at now and in modern times. And so when I got to college, I was thinking about, okay, what subject do I want to teach? And I settled on history because I knew that if I was going to be a math teacher at the high school, I'd have to take a lot of upper level math courses. I knew I did not want to do that. Calculus was kind of my peak, and took that in high school, and knew I did not want to try and take that again in college or something above that. And so just kind of through that process of elimination, focused on history, and then just kind of took off from there.
Did you face any challenges during your college years, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I'd probably say some faced academic challenges, and personal challenges. It was definitely very real, kind of being in a small town my whole life and having a really connected community and knowing exactly where my place was in the world, for so long. And then you go to a 4-year university where you only know a few people, and you quickly realize that the world does not care about you as much as you think that it does. And you kind of get out there on your own, and it's definitely a culture shock. It's a shell shock. Like I said, you're so comfortable in an environment here, and then you're just exposed to a lot of things. You're exposed to a lot of, like I said, cultural and societal controversies in terms of, really just everything, kind of how to handle that. You're exposed to a lot more, decisions that kids can make, as young adults, and how you're going to handle that. And it's a lot harder to say mom and dad said no when you're, 19 and living on your own. When you're living on your own, your friends trying to do, get you to do things. And, so you kind of have those struggles there. And then, obviously the academic ones. Like I said, it does not have the same environment as high school. Teachers are not knocking down your door trying to get you to turn things in. It's if you want to do it, you're going to do it. If you don't, you won't. And that was kind of a hurdle that I had to pass my freshman year of my very first term. I was put on academic probation for a little bit. I didn't go to class very much and thought I could handle the 8 a.m.s because that's what I've always done, and did not work. I failed my first few tests. I went from high school, never failing a test, never struggling grade-wise, to, now I'm in the DEC range of my intro-level classes at college. And so, you're faced with a lot more adversity hurdles. And then for me, it was just kind of making a decision in terms of what do you want to do and what kind of person do you want to be. And doesn't mean that it's all of a sudden got easier when you make that decision, but just deciding to buckle down and what are you going to say yes to and what are you going to say no to, and the kind of the personal aspect, and then just academics. Are you going to be willing to go to the office hours? Are you going to be willing to find the help that you need? And if you are, you're going to be fine. And if you won't, then you'll probably continue to struggle. Mm-hmm. But yeah, some of the things that I learned a lot through that was, it's okay to fail. Sometimes it's, I remember calling you the first time I failed a math test, and it was trigonometry. It was something I did my sophomore, junior year of high school, no problem. And then all of a sudden I'm doing it again in college 3 years later and struggling. And, not sure how I'm going to be able to pass, not sure if this is going to derail my whole college experience and have to go an extra year. And again, going back to trying to get it done really fast. And so, it's a little thing, but it's definitely, you realize, again, what you really want to do. And then failure is okay, and everybody does that, and nobody actually really cares if you fail as long as you kind of keep going. So,
what extracurricular activities or clubs were you involved in during college?
My freshman year I kind of got involved with the church group. We did a lot of just kind of social events together. But once I transferred to Western Oregon, my goal was to get plugged in here because I knew I wanted to live here and teach here. And so that's kind of the avenue I took. I didn't really get involved with my college. I started getting more involved here. Volunteered. Coaching basketball was the first thing I did, and with Mr. Emmert, and then started getting plugged in with the football team and being an assistant coach there with our JV team and whatnot, and just trying to find ways to again get plugged in here and trying to create connections, ultimately leading to a job interview, hopefully. So that's where I spent most of my time, was not really at the university. I did that for school, and I was working. But my extracurricular time was in here coaching and just trying to build that resume.
How did your college professors impact your learning journey?
I think a lot of that was when I finally got into the education program through Western Oregon, because all those classes are specifically related to teaching in a classroom. And so I was able to learn a lot of kind of cool strategies and techniques and, things like that. Again, I was spending more time, trying to get plugged in here and learning. So I learned more from the high school teachers that I were talking to. College is tough sometimes with the professors because, they definitely can only, teach so much and they can only say so many things. And so you kind of start asking them the questions that you really want to know in terms of how do you handle, these specific situations. And you might not get as much, I guess, from college professors as you want, and help in terms. And so, again, leaning a lot more on, high school teachers who were in the building doing what I was trying to do. But yeah, it just really helped with motivation, keeping going, and helping with balancing a lot of schedules and the work-life balance and things like that. But ultimately just being present and, modeling, just being a good person, good teacher, and showing that it can be done every single day. So.
Share a memorable moment from your college days.
I mean, the one that I think about quite often is when I called you when I failed the math test, because it was really the first time that I had truly, something academic-wise did not go the way that I had planned on it going. And I didn't really know what to do. And so it forced me to kind of learn how to push through that avenue. Because when you're that age, you got a lot of different kind of things coming at you, and there's, you have all your friends doing something a little bit different and all making more money than you are and, all going into a different career path than you are. And so you kind of start to question and doubt your path and your calling and things like that. And so you kind of start looking in different windows and I've learned as an adult that doesn't ever really go away, and especially every time struggles come up, you kind of start looking at, different things you could be doing, different things you could have done to alleviate this situation, but just truly learning how to kind of push through and keep going on the path you're going and just kind of trusting what's going to come in the future. I think was a pretty pivotal moment in my life and created a really strong foundation for, the next few years.
What skills or knowledge gained in college have been most valuable in your teaching career?
Being personable with a lot of different personalities. When I was in high school, it was very easy for me to, again, I was very comfortable in who I was as a high schooler. I was very comfortable in what I believed, and I did not have a problem with presenting that to others. I did not have a problem arguing or debating beliefs, and I didn't really care what people thought about me. It was really easy for me to burn bridges because if you didn't think this way, then I thought you were wrong, and then it wasn't worth talking to you. And college forced me to kind of grow up in that aspect and learn that what's most important is that people are people, and those relationships are what matter the most, not what you believe about XYZ, whether it's sports or politics or anything like that. And so I was forced to kind of interact with people that, are typically not from this demographic, here in Sweet Home and learn a lot from them and again, question a lot of my foundational beliefs and how I present those to people and how I discuss in ways that allow us to continue to have a relationship while still having differences in those beliefs. And I think that's only helped me, as a teacher, relating to a lot of different students who have a lot of different backgrounds, and then again, just as adults, with colleagues and bosses and things like that, being able to communicate with them and relating and just finding common ground. Like I said, I learned a lot through college on how to do that and those experiences, and like I said, have just benefited me as a person and as a teacher. So,
good. If you could go back to college, what would you do differently?
I'd slow down. I would slow down, and which is something that everybody always told me. And not that I regret anything that I did, and I absolutely love where I'm at in my life right now. But it's kind of like as an adult looking back, as being a kid, it's like you have so much less responsibilities. It's like if you just slow down and enjoy that more. Maybe you have some different experiences, a little more fun and some different things. But yeah, I mean, I'd probably just slow down, and not necessarily from an academic standpoint, but just from a social standpoint. Meeting people and creating friendships, and I have lifelong friends now. That were from college, but it wasn't as strong of a relationship as maybe it could have been. And you have people all the time that have college best friends, and and look back on their college years and all the social gatherings and things like that, and absolutely love it. And I kept myself from a lot of that through trying to get plugged in here as fast as possible and trying to get done with school as fast as possible. And like I said, I don't necessarily regret that, but it's something I look back on like, man, if I would have done this a little bit different, slowed down just a little bit, I'd still probably end up where I'm at. Just with a little bit different experiences and memories that I probably would have enjoyed. But
Sure.
But that's always easy to say after the fact, and so I totally get it if people struggle with that. But I'd probably, just slow down.
Fine. What advice would you give to students considering higher education?
The biggest piece of advice that I give just starting out is really think about, what you want to spend your money on. Going through it, I was definitely the kind of kid that I don't know if looked down is the right word, but I had this weird aura of community college, and there's a lot of people from Sweet Home that were going to Lynn Benton Community College when I was a senior in high school, and I felt like I didn't want to do that. I felt like it was just a continuation of high school, for whatever reason, thinking that I would be in all these classes with all the same people and seeing all these people at the same time. So I avoided that, and I went to a 4-year university right out of the gate, which is awesome, and I'm not saying don't do that, but the piece of advice I would give is if you're going to a 4-year university, really, pay the money to be in a dorm, and create those relationships and do the same things that kids that are going to the same school as you are doing. I didn't do that. I put myself in an apartment and just didn't really, it was hard to connect. It was hard to create those friendships right out of the gate. And when, like I said, when you're in a brand new culture and world, you don't have anybody to really lean on. And so you find yourself going back to what was comfortable. And that's usually friends from high school, usually maybe even moving back, things like that. Which is again, I'm not saying don't do that, but if you're not going to live in the dorms, my advice is save the money. Go to a community college. You're going to take the same exact classes, and again, I think the 4-year university, the benefit of it is the dorm aspect and creating those relationships. And if that's not for you, financially, socially, for whatever reason, really think about going to a 2-year community college, especially with the connections that we have with LB and getting a lot of that paid for. And sometimes you even get some of that money back, and get some money in your pocket for that. Highly encourage that because, like I said, I mean, my little sister, she made money going to LB, and I put myself in a lot of debt, and so my biggest piece of advice, if between a 2-year and a 4-year, think about your living situation, and if you want to stay home, go to a 2-year. So, just kind of advice, I guess, is truly, you're going to come to a point where you're going to realize, that the world is the world, and it's not centered around you, and that's okay. That is okay, and you'll probably enjoy that quite a bit. But just really understand that your success is dependent on you, and every single one of our students here at the high school can be successful. They just have to make the decision on what that success looks like for them, and then chase that image that they have set for themselves. And whether they meet it or not, could be the continuous motivation. But always, have a purpose, always have a goal, and whatever that purpose and goal is, you can do it. You just have to decide what it is, and then you have to go after it. I think a lot of people get stuck because they have a hard time finding that purpose or finding that goal, and so then they just kind of settle in whatever rut that they're in, or whatever maybe job that they're in. But everything that they want, they can 100% go get. They just have to decide to do it. And,
Right.
It's the same thing we tell them here at school. Whatever grade they want, they can
Right.
get. They just have to go do it, and they're all 100% capable. And so, and just trust in themselves, and they'll be able to do it.
Right.